I wasn't expecting her name to light up my phone again. Not after all those weeks of silence. The kind that make you question if what happened between you was ever real or just a long dream that didn't belong to either of you. Her message was short. Come outside. No punctuation. No explanation. Just those two words that made my heart drop and race at the same time. I sat there for a minute, staring at the screen, pretending I hadn't already grabbed my jacket. It had been months since I last saw her, Mara. 46, maybe 47 now. A woman who carried her years like a secret she refused to share. Her voice always low, her words careful, as if each one cost her something. I met her by accident, or maybe by some quiet design. She used to come into the coffee shop where I worked late shifts, always near closing. Black coat, same seat by the window, never sugar in her coffee. I noticed the way she'd look outside before every sip, like she was waiting for someone who never came. At first, I didn't talk much. Just good evening, and your usual. But she had that kind of presence that pulled words out of you without asking. Sometimes she'd smile, not the polite kind, but one that felt like she saw right through your rehearsed calm. That smile was trouble. The night she texted, the street was half asleep. Wind scraping against the windows, a stray cat darting across the wet pavement. The kind of quiet that makes you hyper-aware of your own breathing. I stepped outside, phone still in my hand, unsure if I should text back or just wait. Then I saw her, standing under the flickering streetlight, arms folded, hair tied back, but not neatly, like she'd left in a hurry. She looked both out of place and perfectly meant to be there. Mara, I called, my voice almost lost to the wind. She looked up slowly, like she was deciding whether to smile or turn away. Instead, she just said, "You took long enough." I laughed nervously, even though nothing was funny. I wasn't sure if you meant me. She stepped closer, close enough for her perfume to cut through the cold. That faint mix of rain and jasmine I'd never forgotten. Who else would I mean? That's the thing about her. She never said what she didn't mean. We stood there for a while, not talking. She had that distant look again, the one that made me feel both too young and too curious. "Why now?" I finally asked. Her eyes softened. "Because I kept pretending I didn't miss you. I didn't know what to do with that. The honesty, the danger of it. She was supposed to be gone, past, untouchable. And yet here she was, looking at me like I'd been haunting her the way she'd haunted me. The air between us felt electric, like something inevitable was about to happen, something neither of us could take back. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded note, and handed it to me. Her fingers brushed mine, not by accident. "Read it later," she said quietly. "Not now." And then, before I could ask anything, she leaned in, close enough that I could feel her breath near my ear. "Don't make me wait again." She walked away before I could move, heels clicking against the wet street, fading into the night. I stood there, holding that note, heart hammering, rain beginning to fall again. The kind of rain that makes everything feel like a beginning. The note sat on my nightstand all night, unopened. I must have picked it up a dozen times, turning it over, tracing the edge of the paper with my thumb. I didn't need to read it to know it would ruin my sleep. Mara's words always did that. Not because of what she said, but what she left unsaid. By morning, I gave in. The note was simple. Her handwriting was sharp, elegant, impatient, like her. "I'll be at the old cafe tonight. Same corner table. Don't come if you're still afraid of what this is." Afraid? Maybe that was the right word. Maybe I was. The cafe wasn't ours anymore. I'd quit that job 2 months after she stopped coming. Said it was because I needed to focus on school, but that was a lie. Every night she didn't show up. I felt like a fool standing behind the counter, waiting for a ghost. Mara had once told me she used to come there after her husband left. She'd said it like a fact, not a confession. He was tired of feeling like the younger one, she'd said with a half smile that never reached her eyes. I didn't know what to say then. I just refilled her cup, trying not to imagine what it was like to be the man who walked away from her. Now, walking into that same cafe felt like stepping back into something unfinished. She was already there, hair down this time, coat draped over the chair, eyes following me before I even reached her table. "You came," she said softly. I didn't know if I should. Neither did I. The pause between us stretched long enough to feel dangerous. I noticed a small scar near her wrist, something I'd never seen before. Old, thin, barely there. I wanted to ask, but it felt too intimate. Instead, I said, "You cut your hair." She smiled faintly. "Needed a change." I almost said, "So did I," but the words caught somewhere in my throat. The conversation drifted. Books, her new job, the neighborhood. None of it mattered. Every word felt like a way to delay the real question. What are we doing here? At one point, she reached for her cup, and her fingers brushed mine, just a second too long to be accidental. Neither of us moved. Her hand was warm, steady, familiar. "Mara," I whispered, finally meeting her eyes. "If anyone saw us, they'd think what they want," she said, cutting me off gently. "They always do." That was the moment it hit me. How much she'd already lost to people's opinions. How much she'd stopped caring. And maybe that's why I couldn't stop. We sat in silence after that, the noise of the cafe fading around us. She leaned back, watching me the way she used to watch the rain, patient, knowing, unafraid. When I stood to leave, she didn't stop me. Just reached across the table, slid her hand into mine for the briefest second, and said quietly, "Don't disappear again." Her voice trembled on the word again, and that tiny crack, that's what broke me. The next few days, I told myself I wouldn't see her again. That what happened at the cafe, the look, the touch, had been a mistake. But the problem with Mara was that she lingered, in the quiet between thoughts, in the taste of coffee that wasn't hers anymore. I saw her everywhere, in shadows, reflections, the soft hum of a song she once said she loved. And then she called. Her voice was low, urgent. "Can you come by? Just for a minute." I shouldn't ask, but she didn't finish. She didn't have to. Her house was small, tucked behind an overgrown hedge, light spilling through half-drawn curtains. I hesitated before knocking, part of me hoping she wouldn't open the door. But she did, barefoot, wearing an oversized shirt that wasn't trying to impress anyone. Her hair was messy, and her eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. "Sorry," she said quickly. "I shouldn't have." I stepped inside before she could finish. "It's fine. You sounded like you needed someone." "I don't need anyone," she said too fast. Then quieter. "I just didn't want to be alone tonight." The words hung there, trembling between us. We sat in her living room, quiet except for the rain starting against the windows. A half-empty glass of wine sat on the table, and an open book lay face down beside it. "You still read in silence," I said. She looked at me with that familiar half-smile. "And you still stare too long." "I don't mean to." "I know. It should have been a warning, but it wasn't. It was an invitation." Then came the sound, a key turning in the front door. Her face drained of color. "Shit," she whispered. The door opened, and a man's voice echoed from the hallway. "Mara? You here?" She stood so fast her wine glass tipped, spilling dark red onto the carpet. "Don't say anything," she hissed. I froze. My heart felt like it might split open. The man, older, tired, maybe 50, stepped halfway into the room, jacket in hand. He stopped when he saw me. "Oh," he said flatly. "Didn't know you had company." Her voice was too calm. "He's one of my students. From the writing workshop." I nodded, barely breathing. He looked at me for a moment too long, then at her. Something passed between them. Not anger, not quite indifference either. Just distance. "Well," he muttered, setting his keys down, "don't stay up too late." When the door to the back room closed, Mara finally exhaled. Her hands trembled. "I thought he was gone for the weekend," she whispered. "I wanted to ask who he was. Ex-husband, maybe, or the one who never fully left, but the question didn't matter. All I could say was, 'You should have told me.'" She looked up, eyes shining with something between apology and defiance. "Would you have come if I did?" I didn't answer, because we both knew the truth, yes. Outside, the rain grew harder, hammering against the window. She stood close, maybe too close, her breath barely touching my jaw. "You should go," she whispered. But neither of us moved. The thunder rolled, loud, heavy, final, and in that brief flash of lightning, our eyes met again. A heartbeat away from something we both knew we shouldn't survive. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound, every raindrop, felt like it belonged to her. The image of Mara standing in that half-lit room, shaking hands, eyes full of fear, kept looping in my head. I told myself it was over. That whatever this was, it had crossed a line neither of us could afford. But telling myself that was like trying to unhear a song that had already worked its way into my bloodstream. The next evening, I went back anyway. Her car was in the driveway, lights on inside. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled like thunder. I hesitated at the gate, half hoping she wouldn't answer. She did. Mara opened the door slowly, eyes red-rimmed. She didn't look surprised. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know." Silence. The kind that fills every corner of a room until breathing feels like trespassing. "Who was he?" I finally asked. She turned away, walking toward the kitchen. "Someone who still thinks we have time. Your husband. Almost ex." Her voice cracked on almost. "He still drops by sometimes. Pretends to check on the house. Does he know about me?" She stopped, hands braced against the counter. "There's nothing to know about you." That stung more than it should have. "Right?" I said. "Because we're nothing, right?" She spun around then, anger flashing through the exhaustion. "You think this is easy for me? You think I don't lie awake, wondering what the hell I'm doing letting you in?" Her words hit like rain against glass, sharp, relentless, breaking something fragile. "I didn't ask you to," I said quietly. "But you did." She looked at me then, really looked, and something shifted. The anger drained, leaving only raw honesty. "You remind me of who I used to be," she whispered. "Before everything got complicated. Before I learned how to hide." I stepped closer, heart pounding. "Then stop hiding." "Don't say that," she murmured, shaking her head. "You don't understand. You get to leave. You get to start over. I have to live with every version of me that people already decided was wrong." "Mara," she cut me off with a look, one that could have stopped time. "You think this is just about an age gap, about what people might say? It's not. It's about me being scared of wanting something I don't deserve anymore." The silence after that was unbearable. So I did the one thing I've been fighting not to do. I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. For a second, everything stopped, the ticking clock, the breath between us, the noise in my head. "Mara," I said, barely a whisper. "Tell me to go, and I will." Her lips parted, trembling. "I can't," she said. And then, footsteps. The front door creaked open. A man's voice, faint but clear. "Mara, you left your car unlocked." She froze. My hand still in hers, her pulse racing under my thumb. Between us, the truth was a live wire, waiting to burn whoever moved first. The voice at the door wasn't a husband. It was her son. And that single moment, that single recognition, split the night in half. He stepped into the light, confusion written all over his face. Tall, maybe a year older than me. The same eyes as hers. The kind that saw too much. "Mom," he said slowly. "Who's this?" The air thickened. My throat closed. Mara didn't move. "This is Alex," she said finally, her voice trembling but steady. "He used to work with me. Writing group." Her son's eyes flicked between us, the distance between our hands, the too quiet tension in the room. He wasn't stupid. He noticed. "Right," he said after a beat, coldly polite. "Working late, huh?" He brushed past me, dropped his keys on the table, and went upstairs. The sound of the door slamming was louder than thunder. Mara stood still for a long time. One hand pressed her forehead like she could stop the world from spinning. "Oh God," she whispered. He saw. I didn't know what to say. Every word felt like it might make it worse. "Mara, don't," she said sharply. Then softer, "Please don't." She sat down on the couch, shoulders shaking, fingers twisted together. He's all I have left, she said. He already hates me for the divorce. Now this, she didn't finish. I wanted to tell her it wasn't her fault, that feelings don't always follow rules. But that sounded too much like an excuse, and neither of us needed another lie. So I sat beside her instead. The space between us was charged. Not romantic this time, but fragile. Human. You should go, she said finally, before he comes back down. I nodded, but I didn't move. And if I don't? Her eyes lifted, glassy and exhausted. Then everything I've managed to hold together will fall apart. I left quietly, but not far. I stood on the sidewalk, rain soaking through my jacket, staring up at her window. Inside, I could see shadows moving, her pacing, him shouting. The kind of argument that leaves permanent scars. Then a light flicked off, another on, a shape by the curtain. And then, her son's voice, loud enough to cut through the glass. You always pick the wrong people, Mom. I froze. Mara's silhouette turned toward the window. Even through the rain, I could tell she knew I was still there. Her hand lifted, not a wave, not a goodbye. Something in between. A silent I see you. I can't choose you. That night, I got a message. Not a text, a voice note. Her voice cracked halfway through. Alex, I am sorry. For what you saw. For what you didn't. For not being brave enough to want you the way I did. She paused, breathing unsteady. He's leaving tomorrow. I think. I need to be alone after that. Another pause. Please don't come back. I didn't listen. I couldn't. Her voice message looped in my head all night, each word shaking something loose. The way she said alone sounded like punishment, not peace. By morning, the sky was still gray, heavy with leftover rain. I told myself I'd just go there to make sure she was okay. Not to argue, not to fix anything. Just to see her face one more time. But I think I already knew I wasn't strong enough to walk away again. Her street was quiet. The curtains were open this time. Inside, she sat at the kitchen table, hands around a cup of coffee gone cold. She didn't flinch when I knocked. The door opened slowly. No surprise in her eyes, only exhaustion and something like relief. I told you not to come, she said softly. You did. Then why? Because you didn't say you didn't want me to. The words hung there, sharp and trembling. She stepped aside and I walked in. The air between us felt thin, delicate, like one wrong breath could shatter it. Her eyes were swollen, from tears or lack of sleep. I couldn't tell. He left this morning, she said. Didn't even say goodbye. I nodded. He'll come back. She shook her head. Not for a while. Maybe not at all. We stood there quiet. I keep thinking, she whispered, maybe this was supposed to be a mistake. Maybe, I said, but it doesn't feel like one. She laughed once, small, broken. You're too young to understand what things cost. Then let me spin it anyway. That made her look up. Really look. She moved first. A step closer. Then another. You make me forget how lonely I am, she said. And that scares me. I swallowed hard. Maybe forgetting's the point. No, she said, shaking her head. You don't build love out of escape. You build it out of staying. Then stay. Her breath caught. Her eyes softened. And for the first time, she didn't look guarded. Mara. She reached up, fingertips tracing my jaw, tentative, trembling, reverent. You make me want to try again, she said, voice breaking. And I hate you a little for that. Then hate me, I whispered. Just don't send me away. Silence. Then, finally, she exhaled, a long, shaking breath that sounded like surrender. Her hand slipped into mine. If we do this, she said, we don't hide anymore. No lies. No pretending this is nothing. I don't want to pretend, I said. Good, she murmured, because I'm tired of pretending I don't love you. The words landed like thunder. And before I could speak, before I could even breathe, she leaned forward, resting her forehead against mine. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. The truth was already between us, burning quietly, beautifully, like light under closed eyes. Outside, the rain started again, gentle, unhurried. And in that sound, in that moment, I understood Love wasn't about winning or losing. It was about finally being seen, even if it cost everything else. It rained through the night, the kind of soft, endless rain that blurs the line between yesterday and today. When the light finally broke through the clouds, it spilled gently across her kitchen floor, catching the rim of her coffee cup, the half-open curtains, the quiet mess we'd both become. Neither of us had slept much. She sat by the window, wearing one of his old sweaters. Not because she still wanted him, but because it was warm, familiar. I stood behind her, hands in my pockets, unsure if I was supposed to speak first or wait for her to breathe. When she finally did, her voice was calm, almost steady. "I used to hate mornings like this," she said. "They always came after something ended. And now?" I asked. She turned slightly, eyes tired but soft. "Now it feels like something started, even if it shouldn't have." There was no pretending anymore. No excuses about workshops or coincidence. The truth was out. Between us, between her and her son, between whatever lies we'd been pretending to protect. Mara had told him everything the night before. I didn't ask what words she used. I could imagine the silence, the disbelief, the anger. But she didn't hide me. Not this time. When I asked, "What did he say?" she just smiled faintly. "He said he doesn't understand." I told him neither do I. She reached for her mug, hand steady now. Maybe that's enough for now. Not understanding, but not lying either. We spent the morning talking about nothing and everything. Her garden, my plans, the kind of small details that suddenly feel precious after chaos. She told me she wanted to travel again someday, to see the sea she'd always promised herself. "Come with me," she said, half joking. "You'd really take me?" "Maybe," she said, "if you stop looking at me like I'm a secret." I laughed. I don't think I could even if I tried. For the first time in a long while, she didn't look away. When it was time for me to go, neither of us said goodbye. We just stood there, by the door, close enough to feel the quiet between heartbeats. She touched my collar, smoothing a wrinkle that didn't matter, and whispered, "Don't wait for me to figure everything out. Just live. But don't forget this happened." I nodded, swallowing something that felt too heavy to name. "I couldn't forget you if I tried," I said. Her smile was soft, almost proud, the kind that said she believed me this time. Outside, the air was clean again. The street glistened with leftover rain, the world looking somehow new, like it had decided to forgive itself overnight. I walked away slowly, sunlight catching the puddles behind me, her voice still echoing in my head. Not as a goodbye, but as a promise, the kind that doesn't need to be spoken to stay true. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? More slow-burn romances, second chances, or forbidden love that feels too real to forget?